Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. And in this edition, we're going to be trying to figure out where we think the drivers will be in 2026. No real point doing 2025 because we kind of know where everyone is now, apart from Bottas and a couple of other people. But 2026 is the big unknown.
But who cares about Bottas anyways, huh?
That's true, yeah. He is a worse driver than Perez. That's one for the comments to go angry about. I think 2026 will be more interesting to look at because there's so many unknowns. We don't know where the teams will be. Whereas 2025 as well, we kind of know the pecking order. Like, we don't know exactly, but we know roughly which teams will be fighting for championships and that kind of thing. 2026 is kind of a complete reset. So, so are we going to start at the lower teams at the moment and work up, or are we going to start at the higher teams and work down? What would you prefer?
Let's start from the top. Let's take it from there.
So we're starting at kind of Red Bull and working down.
Red Bull. We'll start with Red Bull, and from there we'll chart our way through. We'll jump away around the order. Okay. We have like 10 teams are there. We'll just use the championship order that was there last season, and we'll jump from one team to another. So First of all, we have Red Bull. Mm-hmm. What do you think? I mean, let's start with you. Red Bull. What lineup do you think will be in place?
I personally think it's going to be Ricciardo and Lawson for 2026.
Oh, geez.
Which sounds ridiculous. Here's what I'm thinking. I think that obviously Verstappen is not 100% happy at Red Bull at the minute. I don't think it's as bad as the media makes it out, but I don't think he's completely comfortable with the way things are going. Obviously, Jos is being Jos and throwing his baby out of the bathwater and his pram on the toys on the floor, and getting frustrated every week. Yeah, he's throwing his toys out of the bathwater. So Jos is obviously annoyed. Helmut will probably leave at the end of 2025. I think he's kind of working towards retirement, and Horner is basically trying to make Marco as redundant as possible at the minute. Anyway. And then you're going into a 2026 where they don't have Newey to help with the design of the new car. I think without Newey, I still think they'll have a fairly comfortable grasp of the aerodynamics because Newey put an epic team in place. So I don't think they're going to be absolutely terrible there. But I think between the aerodynamics of Newey not being there, the mechanical platform of Newey not being there, the new team being put under pressure for kind of the first time in a brand new reg set, and them making new engines, I think Max will probably look at all of that together, plus kind of the infighting and so on, not knowing where the team's going, and already having probably either won 4 championships this year, potentially a 5th championship next year if Red Bull still stays ahead, or at least comfortable enough for him to challenge.
Yeah,
he could say, right, I've done everything I needed to do at Red Bull. I've been here for 10 years nearly now, or it will be his 10th season with Red Bull. I believe because he was 2016 in Red Bull, right? Yeah. So 10. I think Max will potentially think, right, this is kind of uncomfortable now. I've done enough. Let's get a new challenge. And also going into 2026, he's probably thinking, right, if I go to a different team, it's kind of a toss-up of whether this is a good one or, there's so many unknowns. I just think it's time for him to move on. So I don't think he'll move like everyone thinks for 2025, but I do think at the end of 2025, he'll move on. And if they don't win the title in 2025, I think he'll absolutely move on. So that's what I think. I think Max will be gone. I'll talk about obviously later on where I think he'll go. I think then when it comes to the other drivers, I think that Perez, if he has another difficult season, there's kind of like at the end of this season even, I think that's when Horner will kind of say, look, I want one fully known quantity in that car. And if there's a chance that Max is going, then I think he puts Ricciardo in for 2025 anyway, replaces Sergio Perez, and then because you want to keep consistency from 25 to 26, instead of swapping Ricciardo out, he just keeps Ricciardo to 2026. And then you want someone who's quick but consistent in the other car and probably someone younger. So because he hates Yuki Tsunoda and Yuki will be gone with Honda probably anyway, he puts Lawson in the other car. Do I think that's the best driver lineup? Absolutely not. But I think it's a comfortable enough one when you're in the position where you're just trying to figure out where to rebuild the team and kind of develop the car back. And I think you need kind of 2 known quantities in the car.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Okay.
You.
Wow.
Let's see.
That's actually a roundabout way of saying that Red Bull is fucked after 2025. Basically.
Yeah, although I will say one thing, which is I think there is a couple of things. Kicking out Horner at this point is a terrible idea. Loads of people have been saying that, right?
I don't think they can kick out Horner.
No, because the thing is, everyone's saying, oh, well, Red Bull themselves should take control. That's a terrible idea. I don't think people understand. Red Bull in Austria haven't done anything for that team except write paychecks since 2006 or 7 when they bought the team. Dietrich set it up so that Horner and Helmut and Newey would basically have full control. So anyone who thinks that Red Bull, the Austrian team, can come in and do a better job, I don't think really understands that they haven't actually done anything. And if you want a big company who just write the checks and run with a board running the team, then you're essentially going to make Red Bull Toyota and they'll never be back. So it's either keep Horner or find a better...
Just imagine if... just imagine the prospects of something like that happening.
I think Horner is, he's to blame for a lot of these problems. But the other problem is, who's your better option? Like, who do you replace Horner with that's going to be better than Horner? And I don't know about you, but I can't think of a single person you could get that would be better at the minute.
Where do you rate Horner in terms of the all-time great team principles?
He's one of the best. Like, I mean, you can hate him personally, you can dislike him as a person, and I completely understand he could wash people the wrong way. I completely get it. And honestly, after living in England, I kind of knew a lot of guys like Horner, and working in like startups, I knew a lot of guys like Horner. Those people generally irk people a lot. But there's no question that he's really good at what he did. The fact that the team fell apart after the performance fell apart after 2014 thanks to the engine.
Yeah.
And he managed to hold everything together to come back and do dominance again. There's very few team principles that do that. The only ones I can think of is the likes of Ron Dennis, Frank Williams. Obviously, you've got John Todd and stuff, but they didn't really actually bring it back. No, they had one run and then...
Yeah, that's it.
It's very rare that a team principal is able to keep things together. So I rate him quite highly for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Even, I think I concur on that part. I think he might go down as probably one of the greatest team principals in Formula 1.
You've got Flavio as well, sorry.
Fuck him.
Because Flavio was Benetton and then brought it back for Renault in the early 2000s. Yeah. So Flavio did it as well.
Flavio was also the guy who basically ended the Renault F1 team in 2009, and now he's going to sell off the Renault proxy team in Alpine in 2025, 26 or whatever it is.
Maybe Bernie Ecclestone just made a sport that is so corrupt that you need absolute bastards to run the team to win.
That's for sure. I mean, but how can anyone doubt that? Anyways,
the point is, I think that the simple fact is, you can dislike Horner personally, but his record speaks for itself. The job he does speaks for itself, and there is a reason why when literally Red Bull turned against him at the start of the year, and he won against the team or against the company that owns the team. There's a reason for that, and it's because they know that without him, they're kind of screwed. So, he's done
Here's
enough.
what's going to happen, by the way. If Red Bull decides that Horner needs to be pushed out, here's what's going to happen. Audi is going to give him a call. Aston Martin is going to give him a call, and they're going to offer him a bucket load of money and even shares in the team.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, whatever you want, take it and join us. And then he'll go there and basically drag everything from Red Bull, take it to that team and rebuild and again become whatever he can.
I would say Ferrari would offer it, but Ferrari offered it to him before and he said no.
Ferrari has, yeah.
Yeah, because he said it wasn't the right fit for him.
Right? Yeah.
It was after.
Apparently,
it was. I think it was 2015, 2016, around the same time they were trying to get Newey, and basically he just said, like, he looked at the board control and said no, because I don't know. I think there's I think Red Bull would be really stupid to get rid of him.
Yeah, they won't. Again, it's basically, honestly, there are a lot of people who hate Horner, and I've seen them hate him since 2010 or something. it's their wet dream that he falls apart. And I've seen the whole nonsense with the verdict coming out as well, where it's basically everyone has made up their mind. The whole verdict with the investigation. So again, you have two people, one who basically think he's done it and he's guilty, then there's the other one who basically think he hasn't, and then that's the line. So it's just, I mean, anyways,
I think we
that's
can
basically
agree.
the world we live in.
Horner is not a great person, but he is a great team
I
principal.
don't think there's anyone you can. Honestly, you can't claim anyone to be a great person
This is
right
the
now
other
in
thing.
Formula
Yeah,
One because we don't know anyone.
Yeah.
We don't know anyone
Let-
personally.
yeah. Basically, what we've learned is that, for all we know, all of the team principals could be like that behind the scenes. They just have better PR or no one pushing against them.
Are.
Let's be honest here. Most rich guys are arseholes.
Yeah. I mean, Epstein Islands don't exist for nothing, right?
Yeah,
Anyways,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, now I'll give my prediction on the Red Bulls 2026. See, we went 5 minutes on a completely sidetracked thing, but again,
No, but
a
we're
lot
kinda
of
talking
knowledge,
about-
a lot of information, by the way.
What we're talking about is kind of the form of Red Bull, which is important to understand why we're making our decisions for the lineups.
Ideally, yeah, because look, right now where Red Bull is, it's in a very precarious situation where if it panics, everything will fall apart. Again, who knows what's going to happen in the future? So again, in my view, I think my driver lineup is for Red Bull is going to be in 2026. It's going to be Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz.
Wow, okay.
That's how I think it will ultimately pan out. Because how I envision things happening is this season what they're going to do is they're going to give Checo probably until Mexico, where he has decent time and a few tracks where he's done well in the past. I highly doubt he'll do as well as he's done in the past. Maybe Baku. Baku has been his, you can
Yeah.
say, one track where he's done well. Even in a Force India, he got a podium there in 2016.
Yep.
But overall, I just think the time is up. I don't think Checo is going to be a Red Bull driver in 2025.
No.
Mostly, I think there are two directions they can go in. The first direction is probably they give the seat to Daniel Ricciardo for 2025, which is highly likely because, again, and I was just analyzing this thing. Ever since Daniel got the new chassis in China this season, he's been more or less on level with Yuki. It's not that the gap between the two
Yeah.
is too big.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, if you really go into the nitty gritties, you can say maybe Yuki has an edge, but it's not like it's massive or something. And Daniel has
Yeah.
had a few good weekends as well. So I think Red Bull is going to give it a punt. 2025 is going to be Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo. Now, what's going to happen in 2025 is I don't think Red Bull is falling away anytime soon, at least in 2025. They will still
Yeah.
have a car capable of fighting for the title. I think Max mostly wins the title because, look, there's one thing good about him. He will bitch and moan for a weekend, but after that, he understands that, okay, this is the reality that's there.
Yeah.
Now, this
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
reality from where I have to make the most of the situation that is there in front of me. So he will, again, he has to because that would be the need of the hour. The entire team and Max, they gel together. They win the title in 2025. But again, I don't see Daniel doing the job that basically Daniel fans expect him to. And he'll be around 36 or 37 by that time. If I'm not wrong, he's way up in age as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when that happens, Red Bull needs a new driver for 2026, and I think Carlos Sainz kind of fits the bill. And
Carlos Sainz is
plus,
ideal. Yeah.
I think the problem with Carlos has been the fact that he can be a bit fractious behind the scenes. He has been that with Max during the Toro Rosso days, so maybe that is something that still there's a hangover of that. But
Yeah.
with the situation that Horner and Marco kind of find themselves in, and with a lack of options, cause Oscar's contract ends in 2026, not in 2025,
Yeah.
and there are no viable options that are actually there on the market. I think they'll get rid of Daniel. Daniel retires. Finally, the chapter closes, and then they bring in Carlos. For
Yep.
Max, from Max's perspective, again, what he'll find out in 2025 is that even though Mercedes, again, I'll be surprised if Mercedes just shoots up the order and becomes the fastest car in 2025. I don't see that happening.
So would I. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, the pecking order is going to be somewhat similar what we have right now. Maybe
yeah.
a 10th or 2 is going to be different.
I think the thing that stands out though is I think that with 2025, unlike a lot of seasons in the past, I think all of those teams will be very close to one another. I don't think, I think even if Red Bull is the absolute fastest, I think it's the absolute fastest by a 10th, maybe 2. Yeah. So that's why 2025 is so exciting, because that's the kind of difference that a driver can make. You know,
precisely. A driver and the team's operational unit.
Yes,
which are
of course,
the two most crucial parts.
Yeah,
and these are the areas where Red Bull excels, and I think he's going to realize that in Red Bull he has the kind of, you can say he has the kind of extra edge that most teams don't provide. And going into 2026, again, 2026 is a gamble for everyone.
Yeah,
because who the fuck knows who is going to win? And
exactly,
it could be Aston Martin, it could be even Audi, it could be Mercedes, it could be Ferrari, it could even be Red Bull, because you count Red Bull out at your own peril.
Yeah.
When you have that, what he'll do, ideally there are two options. One is he sits out 2026, which you've been very, I mean, it was an interesting idea. The other option is he goes for the 2026 season with an open mind. He sees which direction the wind is blowing, and then at the end of 2026, if Red Bull is not competitive, he makes the move. And if Red Bull is competitive, he sticks around and just goes ahead. So that's how I think the Red Bull situation is going to pan out, ideally. I think the lineup is going to be Max and Carlos.
And I think as well that kind of the downside to Max and Carlos was always that, or the problem with Max and Carlos was always that, say, I don't think Max's dad, Jos Verstappen, once again, was happy about it. We know that Carlos Sainz Sr. and Jos Verstappen don't get on, and they were worried about that kind of dynamic as well. But I think in 2026, when they're going into a season where there's so many unknowns, I wouldn't be surprised if Horner kind of puts his foot down and says, look, I need the best lineup, so are you in or out? You know, and it's like, right.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's I think at that point, I just think going into 2026, Horner's going to basically put his stranglehold on a team and say, basically, this is what I'm doing. You're here or you're not, which is why I'm the opposite. And I think that Max goes, because I think he puts that stranglehold and Helmut Max and Jos all go, right, we're
I think Helmut has a contract until the end of 2026, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, but contracts are cards.
Yeah.
if Helmut wants to retire, he can retire, you know, so.
He should retire, because I saw his recent interview and he does not sound well. A bit of a Joe Biden thing has been doing this.
Yeah,
sorry for the bad reference.
I think they'll just keep him around for posterity, basically.
Forever.
Yeah,
forever. Basically.
But
good luck, Cham.
So what's the next team?
Let's go to Haas, the 10th team.
Oh, we're just going to jump up. Okay, we'll jump back up and down.
We'll do that. Yeah.
Well, this is an interesting one now. For Haas, I'm going to say that they have Ocon. I'm not sure. This is a difficult one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking they have Ocon and Behrman still for 2026. I don't think that changes. I think Ocon is on his kind of last legs of teammates, so I think he'll basically stick around in Haas for as long as possible. Because realistically, I think if Ocon goes into Haas and crashes or has problems with Behrman, I think he will then be completely untouchable, because he will have gone to Haas, who will likely be the worst team in 2025 and likely be the worst team in 2026, I think. Because right now, I think it was Ayu Komatsu said in an interview, which I agree with, which is if every team was working to its maximum at the minute, Haas would be 10th because their potential is 10th, whereas everyone else's potential is higher.
Nothing, right? Yeah.
They've got the smallest technical team, the smallest budgets, the smallest everything. The only reason they're doing so well is because of obviously the Ferrari partnership. And also the fact that Williams kind of wrote off this season. Didn't write it off, but they knew this season would be difficult. So they decided to kind of build a load of processes in for this year and kind of get some groundwork done. So they were always off. Alpine was Alpine, so that happened. And Sauber was a shit show. So, you know, you've got the cars around. And then also RB, the second Red Bull team, they kind of floundered for the first kind of quarter of this season so far. Like they weren't, they didn't have all the gears in.
They're still sixth.
They're
right?
still doing well. Yeah,
yeah.
they're still doing well, but they should be well clear of Haas in
Ideally, yes.
reality,
But again,
and I think by the end of this season they could be. But yeah, so I think the real reality is Ocon will have nowhere else to go at the end of 2025 if he causes mayhem. So I think he'll kind of bed in, play the team game in 2025, because if that happens again, he's gone. Like, no one's going to risk it if it doesn't work out at Haas. So I think he'll stay there, and for Haas that makes sense as well, because IU surely wants some experience in, kind of some consistency going into 2026 so that they can benchmark stuff, and it's a difficult enough time without bringing new drivers in as well. And Behrman, I don't think Ferrari shakes up their driver lineup much for 2026. I don't want to give that away yet, but I think Behrman needs more experience before going over there.
Yeah. He needs to prove himself as well.
Leclerc was how many seasons? It was 2 seasons in Sauber, or was it only 1? It was only 1, wasn't it? Yeah,
but he smashed it, right?
That's true, but the thing is with Haas, like, Behrman's not going to be able to absolutely smash it realistically. I just don't think so.
It's going to be very.
And also, Ferrari has long driver contracts at the minute.
Yeah. Okay. First season, 2025. Ocon versus Behrman. Who do you think wins?
It should be Ocon. It should be.
Ideally, I mean, but neither will be scoring much points. So, I mean, who basically edges it? Because it's Haas.
I think Behrman, because I think he's quite consistent, whereas Ocon tends to be... Like, Ocon is really incredible for some races, kind of consistently decent for other races, and then has some races that are just absolute trash. And I think Behrman seems to be kind of that cool, consistent head, and he's going to want to prove to Ferrari that he's reliable in the car. That's going to be his main focus, because I think they'll know whether he has the pace or not. And Ferrari, traditionally, if you look at Mick Schumacher, for example, Ferrari is basically, as soon as you have someone who pushes too hard and crashes, they're going to be like, no, we can't afford that in our car. So I think Behrman's going to be the nice, relaxed, kind of capable hand. The only thing that I think will ruin that prediction for me is getting used to the tires is really difficult for rookies. So that could be the downside, especially if the Haas car isn't great once again compared to the rivals and they're having to push the tires more. So... I think it should be Behrman for consistency, but tires could ruin it. So that's my way of getting out of actually giving you a prediction.
Yeah. Okay. So your prediction is the lineup remains the same for 2026.
Yeah. Well, the 2025 lineup stays for 2026. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my view, I think the one of the drivers is going to be Ollie Behrman, and the second driver is going to be Gabriel Bortoleto. The McLaren.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
I think that's how it's going to...
That's a very good lineup.
I think Gabriel is... I'm still not sure how good he is as a driver. I think he's good, but how good, I'm still not sure. But the man has a mouth on him.
Yeah.
And apparently he gave an interview with, I think it was motorsport.com Brazil. And he said, I think Sergio Perez should be fired. Something on those lines.
He basically, he said he wasn't good enough. They should fire him, basically, or he should have been fired already or something. Yeah.
And I read that, I'm like, good. I mean, as a teenager, if you have such a mouth on you, then I think if it needs these kind of characters.
Do you think Gene Haas would be okay with having 2 young drivers in there? And also, the other thing is, like, if he's a McLaren junior, why is he in a Ferrari car? Do you think McLaren go with that as well?
I think the problem I think there's a reason why I think Bortoleto is going to fit here. The reason is McLaren, first of all, they don't have any opening.
Yeah.
Bortoleto is second in the championship in Formula 2 right now. And Hadjar is leading. Mostly since there aren't many races left, I think Hadjar is going to win this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think next season again, McLaren is going to give another season to Bortoleto in Formula 2. Now, after 2025, I think it will kind of cement his talent, and the talent is there. If he proves himself, he's going to need a promotion into Formula 1. I don't think McLaren has the clout to put him anywhere else.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. At that point in time, I think there's a reason why a vacancy is going to open, why Esteban Ocon won't be there in 2026. I'll tell you why in the next round, why. But for now, I think there's a reason why Ocon will not be in this team. And that slot opens up for Bortoleto, who is actually a bright talent. Behrman will also show himself well. I don't think he'll be out of depth at Haas. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Ocon will hold the edge because, again, your views and my kind of differ. I think he's a very consistent driver, a solid driver, not the elites. So I think he'll just get the points whenever they are on offer and kind of edge it. Something you expect from a young driver and an experienced driver dynamics.
Yeah.
And once Ocon is gone, I think since there is no experienced driver as such available on the grid, Bortoleto will slot in for 2026.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure which direction Haas is going to take, because apparently they're starting, they're on a huge recruitment drive as well, something Komatsu talked about, and there's some Toyota link as well that are being talked about.
Hopefully it works out better for Toyota this time.
Yeah, but again, Toyota is doing it a bit similar to how Honda did with BAR, where they are not.
It's partnership,
going to be a
basically.
technical partnership, and then they'll take it forward from there, which is, again, it's a long-term thing. Let's see how it works out. Usually Japanese don't do it well in Formula 1. But that's how I think the Haas lineup is going to end up. It's going to be these two.
Okay. So we doing McLaren next, or who are we?
Mercedes.
The
team that
next.
finished second last season. We're going to
okay. Yeah. You're going championship order from 2023. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have Mercedes. Who do you think, what will be the driver lineup for Mercedes?
See, I like how you planned this, and I'm just doing it off the top of my head. So it's harder for me. It's always harder for me to go first now, because I'm like,
Yeah.
Well, they've got Antonelli. I think they'll keep Antonelli. And there's a reason I think Antonelli will stay in that seat once he gets it. Because, look, Antonelli will be in that car for next year as far as I'm concerned. So
yeah, he's there. It's almost done.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason he'll be kept around for a while, even if 2025 isn't stellar. And that's because I think Toto thinks he's the next big thing. And Toto already gave up Max, basically. And I don't think he wants to do that again. So I think he keeps him there. And then alongside him,
I am actually curious to know who you think is going to be there, especially since you didn't put Max in Red Bull.
Yeah, off the top of my head now, I'm trying to decide, does Max go to Mercedes or does he go somewhere else? And I think personally he goes somewhere else. So I think they keep Russell for 2026. Even though I think Russell should probably fuck off and go elsewhere and give them the finger. But yeah, look, I think Max goes elsewhere. The problem with Mercedes, I think, in Max's mind is going to be, we're going into another brand new regulation set. Yes, it's more about the engines, but I'm sure he's probably going to get the figures from the engine manufacturers, because they'll kind of do that for drivers like Max. Like if Max wanted to know, right, where's your engine at the minute? Give me some figures, or his management does. I think they give him to him.
You think they will?
Yeah, and I think Max will probably see what I'm expecting to see, which is the Honda engine, the Red Bull engine, maybe not the Red Bull, but the Mercedes, Honda, Ferrari engines. They're all kind of roughly similar. They're within the same space. And I think he probably will think to himself, right, they could smash this in 2026, but it won't be down to the engine. It'll be down to the aerodynamics. And even though James Allison's doing quite well now and everything, is it the best aerodynamics team on the grid? No. So I think Max thinks to himself, he'll go elsewhere. And also, I have an inkling that even though Jos loves Mercedes, I think Max probably isn't a huge fan of Toto Wolff, in his mind. So I think unless he can see that Mercedes is out and out the fastest car for 2026, I don't think he goes there. Because I think Max only goes if he can win, obviously. But if he can't win, I'm sure part of his head goes, I fucking hate Toto as well. So, I don't know. Like, surely he doesn't like Toto Wolff, you know?
I
Maybe,
think so.
maybe he does. I don't know.
I think that's one area where I think he's slightly different from Michael because Michael Schumacher, because I
Yeah.
remember Michael was supposed to join McLaren, but then the whole conversation happened between Michael and Ron, which was quite public. I mean, the video is there on YouTube. We'll add it to the description as well if someone wants to see it. There, where it's 1995 and Michael has all the options on the table: Williams, McLaren, Ferrari, and he has to take a call.
Yeah.
And the conversation, the way it's going on, it's public, and Michael is not entirely sure that he wants to go to McLaren. And as soon as Ron senses the rejection to an extent, Ron goes on the offensive and says, "You better be careful how you drive. You don't think you're too you take too many risks, and you're too dangerous on tracks and stuff like that." And I feel Michael remembered it. Michael remembered that conversation, and he was never quite open to going to McLaren after that, because
Yeah.
Ron approached him quite a few times in 97, 99, and far too many times, and every time it was
Yeah.
not happening. I'm not sure if Max is that way, because Max has been very welcoming of Toto in terms of the
That's true.
conversation that
Yeah.
have been there.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe it's a good thing or maybe a bad thing, I don't know. But the kind of nonsense that Toto had said about Max into 2021, if he goes back and listens to those things, he'll have second thoughts that maybe, again, doing a business proposition, it's understandable. But
Yeah.
somewhere down the line, you need someone who is genuine to a certain extent. Plus, he does not want a scenario of what happened to Alonso in 2007, where Ron Dennis's protege comes in, he's competitive, and Alonso's suddenly becomes the outsider. If somehow Max enters the team, Kimi Antonelli is competitive, he matches him in a few weekends, and then all of a sudden, if Max becomes the outsider because Antonelli is Toto's protege,
Yeah.
you don't want that situation to actually, bear out, because again, Alonso's career took an entirely different turn after that. You don't want that. I don't think he goes to Mercedes.
I just personally, the other thing, the main thing for me about Mercedes is not even like him and Toto. Maybe he can, those things are just external things we see.
Bridge,
yeah, but it just every time anyone talks about Max at Mercedes, it never feels like
it doesn't click.
It's never felt like a right fit to me. Like Max just doesn't. Like, Max is the type of driver that goes in. He wants to be able to shout and scream, give out about the team. He wants to be able to basically have his own way the whole time. And as soon as Hamilton started doing that, the cracks started to show, even after all of their success. Like Hamilton in 22 and 23 complained about the car a lot, complained about the team a lot. And you could see the separation already happening there. And I think, and that's where it kind of broke down by the time we got into this season and there was a smaller contract. And essentially, Hamilton basically said, right, you're not offering me a contract basically anymore. Like you're giving me a 1-season contract essentially with an option. And I think, essentially it was like, right, this is over. And I understand that, but I think, does Max fit in that situation? Like Max is going to want to go in and go, whoever's in the second seat better be a fucking Bottas. I want all of the preferences. I want to be able to scream over the radio. I'm going to tell the team we're not good enough.
I think even if Max does not want that, Yoss would. Which is a big thing.
Yeah, that's true. And then you have Yoss in there as well. Like Mercedes obviously want Max. That makes sense from Mercedes' point of view because
I think every team wants Max.
It's also just a case but it's also just a case of whenever a team's not winning, who was winning, they obviously want some big flag to say we're putting everything into this. And hiring Max Verstappen is kind of we're going to do everything to win flag. So I think a lot of it is Toto basically trying to convince the boards at Mercedes to kind of jump back in more. I've said that a few times. But I don't know. Max at Mercedes, like I probably will end up being horribly wrong here. But it's more just a gut feeling. Every time I look at it, I just go, that just doesn't... It feels like to me that's going to be an Alonso to
sensible, right?
It's going to be an Alonso to McLaren situation where, everyone gets super hyped about Max and this young rookie coming in who we're all expecting to be brilliant, and it doesn't quite pan out, and within about 6 races, Max is emailing the FIA stuff off of Toto's WhatsApp, you know? Like, I just... Because, like, look at... Like I remember when Alonso went to McLaren, it was Alonso and Lewis Hamilton coming in. Lewis was, obviously did turn out to be quite a good driver. But Lewis was very hyped at the time, like Piastri was, for newer fans, like Piastri was, like Antonelli is now. And essentially you got the two of them in, and that fell apart very, very quickly. And I don't know, this has the same feeling to me, where I think things could... It just won't work out.
I think, maybe I'm wrong. I think even the call I made where I said that he'll stick with Red Bull, I think it's entirely, I'm backing the sensibility from Max. None of it has to do with Yos, because if Yos had his way, Max would already be in a Mercedes.
Yes, I think that's true, yeah.
Yeah. I think if Max is sensible enough, he does not go to Mercedes. Primarily, he waits until 2026, where if Mercedes nail the regulations, then sure, go for it. If it's a 50-50 call where they might or they might not, I don't think you want to take that risk, because I don't know. It's something I don't see that as a cultural fit. I've never seen that, but again, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. I also think that the other side to it is that Russell as well is a far better driver than everyone gives him credit for, like a spectacular driver. And
apparently he's far better driver than even Mercedes give him credit for, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. And like, people are saying, oh, well, Lewis is the only one who got 2 wins this season. It's like, yeah, but if you look at both of those situations, Russell through no fault of his own. Russell in Silverstone, I put out that Russell could have won in Silverstone, right?
He would have won in Silverstone.
Yeah, someone said, oh, Russell was never winning that, definitely not winning. I'm like, what are you talking about? He was ahead for the first 18 laps, and we know during those 18 laps he was managing that water issue straight, basically not off the line, but within a few laps they knew they had the issue.
He had, I think, second or third lap, the issue was there. They could have retired him at that very moment.
If Russell was ahead for all of that point, then if he didn't have the issue, of course he could have won. Of course he could have. And then in Belgium, he did win, but the team's miscalculation screwed it for him. Yeah. And, whatever. But my point is, I think this is just a situation where Russell, and now if you think about it as well, in terms of if he didn't have that water leak and did win that, and if he won Belgium without getting disqualified, he would have gained a lot of points over Hamilton there. Like, I know it's only 14.
That's 50 points. 50 points.
Yeah, but that's 2 DNFs where Hamilton got 50 points on him. It wouldn't have been a 50-point swing the other way because Hamilton didn't retire, but it still would have been a points lead. And
it would
Russell,
have been, what, 30?
Well, it would have been an extra.
It would
have been 14. But it would have been a 14-point lead from both, because we assume Hamilton would have came in second in both of those because of where he was.
Russell would have also gained 25 points, right? He's lost these points. Overall, he would have gained 25. So it will be a 68-point swing.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
64-point swing. Anyway,
maths like this are not my strong point. But Russell, and like if we look at everyone's writing off Russell now on recency bias once again, because the last 5 or 6 races Hamilton has had the edge in a few, and unfortunately the fault of Mercedes as well. Russell's been down, but
Mercedes
for the first
sabotaging George Russell.
Of course, yeah. If anyone said that Mercedes sabotaged Hamilton at the start of the season, then if you don't logically say that they were sabotaging him now because it's the same situation, then you're just a moron and you don't deserve an opinion. But for the first 8 races, Russell was far ahead on top of Hamilton at every race.
So that's the whole thing. I think the problem, what happens is Lewis Hamilton, and
this is just the final point on it though. Hamilton is driving spectacularly this season, and it's not to say that. Just the simple fact is, if you think that Hamilton, as I do, is driving spectacularly so far this season, then logically you have to say, then obviously Russell is doing an absolutely stellar job. Yeah. Russell was better than him for half the season, and he's been right there for the rest. And if it wasn't for a couple of mechanical failures, he'd be ahead on points as well. So, or not, well, one mechanical failure, one technical issue with the team. So if you think Hamilton's spectacular this season, Russell is as well. I don't get the underrating of him. And it seems weird that I feel like we're getting that underrating feeling from Mercedes themselves as well.
From Toto as well. And
that worries me.
Yeah. And that brings me to my prediction for who the Mercedes driver lineup is going to be. So in my view, one of the drivers is going to be, in 2026, one driver is going to be Kimi Antonelli. The second driver is going to be Esteban Ocon.
Oh, well, okay.
I don't think George stays there, and I think what's going to happen is because George's contract expires at the end of 2025 season, so Toto is going to do the same shit he's doing this season, where he's going to pursue Max relentlessly. There's already a Kimi Antonelli in the team, and then the entire focus and entire concentration will be on, okay, George is still in the backseat, still in my back pocket. He's not going anywhere. I'm going to pursue Max Verstappen to the best of my abilities.
And he loses
And
Russell.
once George sees that, I mean, George is already looking at it this season, where I think Toto has spent a lot of time talking about Lewis, then Antonelli, then Max. He's had, I think, no such thing to say about George at any stage, and at some point it's going to hurt. It's not. It's the thing is, George has done nothing wrong, and again, I mean, you talked about it, about the comparison with Lewis. I think this season George, I did the whole driver ratings. George is currently the fourth best driver this season, if we average out the ratings for the entire 14 races. Lewis is at eighth, and the reason why Lewis is at eighth, because he had stinker after stinker at the start of the season, and everyone just forgets that. They remember the peaks, which is just not.
You
the
need to
correct
rate
way
over the whole season so far, not
precisely
just
the whole point. Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people are not paying attention to, and I think that is going to play a role next season, because I think there are openings on the grid for 2026, and I think that's where George is going to fit, and is going to leave Mercedes. And the problem with the entire situation is, since George leaves and there's no such viable alternative present who can actually slot in, because Carlos Sainz have already fitted with Red Bull, I think they're going to go back to the Mercedes Junior that they had. They'll bring Esteban Ocon, just put in as, what should we call, the stopgap arrangement, who sticks around with Kimi Antonelli, and then they try to march on and create a new era with Antonelli. That's how I think the whole thing will pan out. Because my reaction was, first, because for the most part I was under the perception that it was 2026 that George's contract ends. And if that was the case, I think the entire dynamics would have been different. But it ends next season. And apparently both Lewis and George's contract were supposed to end at the same time. And yeah, and I think if that's the situation, and if Toto does not put his faith behind George, he's gone.
Which he should.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ideally he should, but...
what I'm kind of hoping is at the end of the season, we see the whole Max thing filter out. Like, Max either decides to stay with Red Bull, or we see... I basically think what will happen is, like, Max will essentially make a decision early on in 2025 after the first few races. And I think that'll mean that Toto kind of has to back George, because there isn't... if Max isn't on the table, then there is no better option for Mercedes in reality.
The contract is not on the table, right? There's no one... I think Lando is in a long-term contract. Charles, Lewis, Oscar, no one is available. So who else is there?
Yeah,
that's the whole problem. Anyways, I think that's us done with Mercedes. Now let's go down the grid and let's talk about Audi. By the way, Audi will be back. No, sorry, not back. The first time it will be on the Formula 1 grid. So who do you think will be the 2026 lineup? The very first lineup of Audi.
Yeah.
God is going to suck, isn't it? I mean, Audi's first season is going to be... I'm so scared of the kind of shitty season the way they've gone about it.
I'm going to let you go first, because I have kind of an interesting thing percolating in my head, and I want a couple of minutes to think it through. So if that's okay.
Okay. So, no, that's fine. So I think one of the drivers is going to be Nico Hülkenberg. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's on a long-term contract. I think the second driver is going to be Sergio Perez. Because...
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah.
Because after 2024, I think he's done with Red Bull. Mostly, he'll be I think the conversations will already be there are already, I think, conversation in the background that Sergio has had with Audi, because I think Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley is also at Audi, so they know someone. They understand that having a driver like Sergio who has the experience of working with Red Bull and being part of that environment, it's going to be a help. Plus, to add to it, he brings the money. Then there's no better experienced option available. Because again, Hülkenberg has the experience, but he's not driven in a championship winning team. So maybe Checo brings that. So at least for the time being, I think 2025, 2026 is going to be the time where the former Force India teammates, they kind of reunite.
Wow. Okay. So I have a crazy one.
Okay, go for it.
And it's not going to be any driver who's currently on... Well, Hülkenberg will be in one seat.
Yeah.
And alongside Hülkenberg will be someone we both know and love, who will come back for basically a 1 to 2 season special to help the team get off the ground.
Oh, okay.
Sebastian Vettel will return for 1 season, maybe 2. It's a big German team, big German investment. I could see them throwing a shit ton of money at him to bring him in because he could help them alongside Hülkenberg as like massive development. And it would be a major signing for Audi as well. And I think that I could just see Vettel kind of saying, well, 1 to 2 years, get 100 million quid in the bank. The only downside to it is Mattia Binotto, but at the same time,
that's why I was laughing. You think Mattia Binotto is going to go to Sebastian Vettel with any offer, and Vettel is going to say yes?
Yes, because I don't think Mattia wanted to get rid of Vettel. I think Ferrari did, and I think Mattia's hand was forced. And I wouldn't be surprised if the two of them get on really well now, because that seems like the type of guy Vettel is. Also, I could also see it as it's the 100% sustainable fuels from 2026.
Yeah.
So I could see Vettel coming in as like a big ambassador to sustainable fuels in F1, using that to kind of launch his kind of campaign for sustainable fuels. I think Vettel coming back, it's also just a wet dream for me because I'm a huge Vettel fanboy. So
ideally, I would have thought if Vettel came back, he would have come back with either a Mercedes or maybe you can say a Red Bull. Because those are the teams, again, not only the fact that they're the front-running team, but culturally they are the right fit with Vettel in terms of, again, Mercedes being German, and they've pursued Vettel over the years. I think it's been 4 or 5 times they've done that. They've done that. Other than that, I think the competitiveness of these two teams was maybe a hook that would lure him. Again, I think maybe the suggestion that you're putting forward. If it I don't know if I'll be happy if that happens, cause
it depends on how good the team is, doesn't it, realistically?
And we know the team is not going to be good. Cause let's be honest. I just doubt.
I don't know. I don't think they're going to be a title fighting team in 2026, obviously, but I do think they'll be very, very good.
I think if they're sixth, I think we've had this conversation before as well. I think if they're 6th in the championship in 2026, I think they'll party like anything, because I think that's probably the best result that they can hope for.
Yeah,
considering everything.
I was just double checking, but yeah, the other reason is Wheatley as well could be a help to convince Vettel.
Wheatley could, because Wheatley apparently has his way with words, right?
Yeah,
Michael Messi knows that very well.
And also, I'm fairly sure him and Vettel had a good relationship.
They had a good relationship.
Yeah.
But I think one of the prerequisites for Vettel to come back is he wants a competitive car. I don't think he wants to do the same shit he did with Aston, where he helped Aston make those strides and get better.
Which is why I think it could be an interesting kind of, a 1+1 season for him, where... Because the problem is, I think that essentially Audi they're kind of doing Hail Marys at the minute. Like they've gone to get Wheatley, they've gone to get Mattia Binotto. They're like making these signings that are kind of huge on paper, but we don't really know how they'll work out, because like a lot of people obviously don't like Mattia Binotto because they think that, you know, he's the reason why Ferrari was so bad during that period. But I think the
Mattia
obvious
Binotto
thing
as
is
an engineer is good. As the technical bit is good.
How they hired him was perfect because he's CEO and CTO. You know, it's the ideal situation. I said when Ferrari got rid of Mattia, I remember saying, if Ferrari had have kept Mattia as like a co-team principal or CEO, CTO, and put Fred as the team principal, that would have been an epic lineup. So I think Audi have kind of done that with this situation where you've got a guy who should be a very good team principal on paper, Jonathan Wheatley. Like, he should be really good. And you've got a guy who was really good at the technical side and kind of the administrative side of Ferrari. And he's going into a team where hopefully Audi don't like do the Ferrari thing and have the board in the pot the whole time. But just because they're making those big signings, I could easily see them going, Vettel, come on, we'll give you fucking 80 million quid for 1 year. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And we'll make you the Audi, you know, sustainable fuels rep for, you know, or the Volkswagen Group sustainable fuels rep. That's huge for him. So I could see him going, right, well, for 1 year and I can help the planet, you know. It's a very Vettel thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
I'd love it as well. It would be amazing.
He's been away from the spotlight to a large extent now, isn't it? I mean, the entire sustainability drive that he was on when he was in Formula One, it, again, whatever I've seen on his Instagram page and stuff, it's basically the nostalgia stuff, only Formula One related. He's not putting out stuff related to the sustainability bit that he was doing a lot during his last season. I don't know where his mind's at. I wouldn't mind him coming back because, again, it's just, I think, ideally, as a fan, I would have been happy watching him even in the 2023 Aston Martin because he would have shown.
It would have been great, yeah.
Yeah. I want him to. I personally want to see him in a car which is competitive, a regular podium scorer, because then he's happy. I mean, the true Sebastian Vettel comes out, just like the true Fernando Alonso comes out when the car is good.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think the developing role is something I'd rather not see it happen because it's too much of a. You're buried at the back, and that's something I really don't want to see from him.
That's true.
Anyways,
I just miss having Vettel on the grid.
I agree.
It's the last driver I was a proper fanboy of was Vettel. I haven't been a fan. Like I've had some favorite drivers, but I haven't been a fanboy of anyone since Vettel left. So
I think Vettel, even when he was winning, was the underdog because he was never supposed to be the hero, but he ended up being the hero. Right, from 2010 to 2013, everyone pretty much was drooling over Alonso and Hamilton, and here comes the young guy who continues to make jokes with everyone, who is a huge Michael Schumacher fan, talks to him a lot.
He was hated by the British media, of course, but that's to be expected.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyways, again,
who are we doing
next? From Audi. Yeah, moving on from Audi, I think Ferrari is the next team. This might be a boring one because I'll go for.
I think Ferrari and a couple of other teams are going to be quite boring, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple of teams where you're like,
has to be.
Yeah. Ferrari is obviously Leclerc and Hamilton still, right? Because I mean, look, even if 2025 is an absolute shit show for the team, Leclerc, I think, is not going to, after all of this suffering, give up going into a new regulation set. I think he's going to want to see what happens, you know, with all of this change. And Hamilton, this is his, like, unless Hamilton decides to do a Vettel or Alonso where he goes to the back of the grid, which I don't see him doing, I think this is the last. Yeah, but this is my point. This is the last contract for Hamilton. So I think even if, again, 2025 is a shit show, I think he at least sees out 2026 just to see what happens. Even though Ferrari are half-season champions at best nowadays, so you know that's. I think Ferrari in 2025 is going to be a mixed bag for both of them because I expect everyone to get super excited when Ferrari comes out at the first race and is really competitive, and for about 5 races they're really competitive, and then it all goes to shit because that's what happens to Ferrari since 2009. But yeah,
I mean, every time I think about Lewis at Ferrari, my mind goes back to the mail that was sent by the fan, the sabotage thing.
Yeah.
Ferrari don't even need to do any sabotage. They screw their drivers unwittingly. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be you look whatever happens if Lewis wins or does not. It's going to be hilarious. What's going to happen with Lewis and Ferrari? And,
so do you think the lineup's going to be the same?
Yeah, unless and until Lewis gets smashed. I mean, he's to an extent in the first half of 2023 he was already getting 2024 he was already getting smashed by George, and if that did not change anything, I doubt it's going to change anything at Ferrari.
Look, Lewis always warms up at the start of the season as well, which doesn't help. So he's going into a brand new team. He's got that warm-up phase.
I think
we've both said the cultural fit's not great. So
yeah, that 30-second clip of just laughing is
just laughter. Yeah. We won't stake too long on Ferrari, but just where do you think they'll be in 2026? Do you think they'll be fighting for a title, or do you think they'll be down the order?
They'll be somewhere similar to where they are right now. I don't think McLaren takes a misstep from where they are currently. I don't think Mercedes is a team capable of fucking up after it has actually got back on its feet. I think Ferrari does that a lot. So
yeah.
I think they'll be the fourth fastest team. They might win a few races. I think even this season, I won't be surprised if Ferrari wins a couple more. Mm-hmm. We'll see a race where
they'll bounce back for the end of the season, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Even Zandvoort, I won't be surprised if they're good there because the track kind of helps. But overall, I think they'll be the fourth best team.
I think I'm concerned that by the end of 2025, Fred Vasseur just says, "Screw this, I'm out of here," and the team kind of falls apart again in 2026 because it feels like the top guys at Ferrari just cannot keep their hands out of the pot, and it seems like it's just pissing Fred off more and more. So I could just see him just going, "I've had enough of this. Like, I'm out of here."
Could be,
but we'll see.
It won't be the first time, isn't it?
Yeah. Who's the next team? Because there's not really much more to say about Ferrari, is there? Except Ferrari will be Ferrari.
Yeah. Next is RB, the mini Red Bull team, the former Toro Rosso.
This is a tough one now, because Jesus Christ, yeah, this is a tough one. I think it'll be Hajar in one seat. I'm trying to think. The thing is, it'll be Hajar in one seat, right? But then RB wants someone. Yeah. But then RB, like Red Bull themselves, seem to want to not make that the junior team anymore. And I have a feeling in 2026, with Horner taking more and more control, that team will want someone with experience in the second team. Who do you put in the second team there? That's really difficult. Oh God, I have no idea.
You put Lawson in Red Bull, right?
Yeah. And Yuki will be gone because Honda will be gone for 2026.
That's done, yeah.
So that's kind of a no-brainer. I'm lost now. I'm trying to think who are the juniors that could come up. Like, who could they bring in? So this is probably the toughest one to think of.
Yeah,
that I'm trying to think.
That's why I sat down and did the whole fucking thing, Because Because I rattled my brain on the same thing because I was so confused. The thing is, there are 20 drivers and you have to fit them, and it gets very, very confusing. Because the problem is there are no obvious contenders right now with especially with Red Bull, because Red Bull has been so unpredictable.
It's just, the thing is, even their junior program, just normally in the past, if you ask me who will be in that team, it would take 5 seconds, because I was I'll know roughly who's the best in their junior program. So if this person goes, I kind of know who's coming in next. And at the minute, I'm like, apart from Hajar, who
Arvid Lindblad is there, but I think he will be a bit too young. I think he won't win the Formula 3 championship this time around.
But the other problem is as well, though, I don't think they'll put 2 young drivers in there because they don't seem interested in doing that.
I think they will, because the problem is, I think they realized this season that if they do not have a proper supply chain in place, they get screwed big time. Because this season they've realized that they don't have a viable option or an alternative for Sergio Perez. And this is actually a wake-up call if there ever was one. So ideally, what I went with is because again, I have not promoted Liam Lawson to Red Bull. I think Lawson would be doing his first season with RB next year. He will be teamed up with Yuki, and then 2026 Liam will be there, and then Isaac Hadjar will come in for his first season. I think after Hadjar wins this season, the Formula 2 championship, he'll go into the Super Formula in Japan. 1 year there, and if he impresses, then he'll get the seat in Formula 1. So that's how I've thought about it. But you've promoted Liam Lawson up top.
Yeah.
My worry with not promoting Arvid Lindblad was that I think he's 16 right now, and he will be 18 by 2026, which is viable. But I think maybe Red Bull might not rush him the way Kimi Antonelli has been rushed by Mercedes.
I'm trying to think. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a pain in the arse because I haven't thought about this, but if I think about it anyway, there's no way Yuki is on the grid anywhere else. So I think that it's Yuki and Hadjar for 2026. I think even without the Honda money, they've got no better option. They need Ricciardo in the big team. So they give him an extra 1-year contract. And I don't really think there's anywhere else for Yuki to go straight away. Because I was considering putting Yuki at Alpine, but I don't think that's a good fit. So, yeah.
I think that's not safe for anyone.
Yeah. Right, so that's what I'm doing. I think it makes sense. Yuki Tsunoda sticks around for one extra season.
In terms of performance, no one can actually raise questions on that front either.
No, and also it allows them consistency to test, Hadjar in the other seat.
Benchmark.
So, yeah. So that's what I'm going to do.
I think it makes sense.
I think it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Yuki's not expensive either, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I think Honda... Yeah, but again, it's fine. It's not too much of a hassle either ways.
No.
And
he's
next
not
up
going
we have
to Aston, so.
Yeah. We'll talk about Aston as well, by the way. First, McLaren. So, this is going to be another boring one.
Yeah.
I think Lando and Oscar, I think they're going to stick around. Oscar's contract ends at the end of 2026. I thought about it a bit. Again, if my main worry was they are going to break up eventually.
Yes.
Because I don't think this is a sustainable lineup. Because both are very good, both are hungry, and both are very close to each other in terms of performance now.
Yeah.
But I think 2025 is still going to be a year where it's going to be the first year of World Championship, and the drivers, the team as well, they're going to learn on the job. And I think they're just going to stick it out for 2026. After 2026 is when you see the cracks appearing, if there are going to be any.
I was considering when we started this saying Piastri to Red Bull. If Max leaves, the slot opens up.
Ideally,
Red Bull go hard for Piastri or for even Norris. Like one of the two goes to Red Bull to fill Max's seat would make sense, because if Red Bull wanted a top tier talent, that's kind of where you would look. That those are the only two realistic options. You could probably buy out a contract,
safer ones, as well.
Yeah. I think Piastri or Norris, one of them leaves at the end of 2026, because I think basically over the next 2 seasons we get like a clear team leader and that person sticks around. I'm not sure who that will be, honestly, because at the moment Piastri is catching Norris quite quickly, but as I've spoken about in the past, we also shouldn't make the inference that means Piastri is going to get way ahead of Norris, because Piastri could get right on Norris's tail, and then that's kind of the limit of Piastri's talent, So it really depends on where it is. I think the two of them are there for 2026, because I think realistically, if they have a really good season in 2025, even if they don't win the championship, I think it would be silly for the drivers to leave into an unknown. You know what I mean? Like, why would you gamble and say, right, a seat is opened up at Mercedes, but we don't know if we'll be the best team or they will next year. It's like, it's probably better if I just... Because it's easy. If you just change team, then you have less options at the end of 2026. Whereas if your contract kind of ends or has an option at the end of 26, you can see what's happening in 2026
I
and
think
then
it seems
move.
that everyone is doing that, right?
Yes.
Leclerc has an option after 2026.
Yep.
Lewis,
Yep.
even I think Oscar's contract ends in 2026.
Yeah.
Max has an
Lando
option,
has
but
a
I don't
long
know.
contract that has an option at the end of 2026.
Even he
So
does. So
yeah,
everyone, I think every driver has kind
the
of
top tier
been
drivers
very
kind of have that.
smart
Yeah.
in that sense,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's there. I think
It
it
makes
makes
sense because
sense.
you're gonna want to see like, okay, well, there's no point me, because the problem is if you gamble at the end of 2025, which the only person I think realistically wants to do that is Max, because I think Max will be in the position where he can gamble for a season and it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world, you know. He'll already be a 4 or 5 time world champion likely by then, so
Yeah.
you know,
Not yeah, it's
so
and even in his case, I doubt he'll do that. Because
well, I've already said he has, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. Wait. Oh, okay.
we
I
haven't
think
got
I
to
have
that
I
yet.
have an inkling where you're like, I'm going to put, but yeah, I think it makes sense. Let's move to the next team because I don't think there's much to talk about McLaren anyways.
No.
Next up is Williams.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think McLaren, though, will be a title contending force in 2026. I think they've finally got everything into place.
26.
Yeah.
I don't know. 26. Look, 26 is a wild card. I have
Yeah.
no idea.
I just think so because I think they'll, even if they're not title contending, I think they will be one of the teams that's like fighting for wins consistently, even if that means they're not like, you know, right at the front. But I do think they'll be a top team because I think they're getting the Mercedes engine, which probably will be one of the stronger 3 engines. Again, I don't think huge difference, as I've said a million times, but it's not like in the past where customers got like a shit version of the engine. They all have to get the same mapping, the same parity.
I think that could be happening. That's where that's where I kind of pushed the brakes on McLaren because look, a works team is a works team. There's a reason why.
But the thing is, it used to be the case of if you took the Mercedes engine, Mercedes would literally give the B teams a different, less powerful engine map than the current ones. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So under the regulations, they have to have the same engine.
No, it's not
and
even
the
that.
packaging won't make a huge difference anymore, I don't think, in these regs. Like, you know, so.
I mean, the fuel is going to cause issues, right? Because even when we moved from the even in 2022 when we moved to the E10 fuel, the 10% ethanol, even that caused a lot of remember Max had
Red Bull, yeah.
2 DNFs in 4 races.
Those things could happen, but
yeah,
I think they've got Rob Marshall there to fix those issues, so I don't think that's going to be a huge problem.
Like Rob Marshall has,
and a Red Bull signing who was there through the Honda and Renault integration. So not only does he know what goes right, he also knows what not to fucking do.
Wrong.
So I have high hopes for McLaren in 26. But anyway, yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things that are going their way, and at least you can expect them to be at the sharp end of the grid. I think I agree with you on that.
Williams, another boring one, I think, isn't it? Because it's not really boring, but it is just.
I've moved Carlos to Red Bull. What's your?
Oh shit! Yeah, you have. Yeah. No, I think Carlos can't afford a 1 year and then move. Personally, I think Carlos is very much going to play the game of. There is a ton of contracts ending at the end of 2026. If he can prove in Williams that he's faster than Albon, he's a reliable hand. This will be his thinking. I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying that's what he's thinking. Even he can see where Williams starts going in the trajectory, but also there's a good chance that at the end of 2026, one of the top teams kind of needs a position to fill that he can jump McLaren. In on a 1 year. Yeah, any of those teams, yeah. Even Ferrari might end up with its tail between its legs coming back. So I'm going to say Albon and Carlos stick around. I think Williams will offer them a decent deal as well because, well, actually they're already on a contract till the end of 26 anyway. Yeah. So I think the two of them stay there.
Yeah. So for Carlos, the situation is that he has a hefty contract first. Secondly, he has the exit clause for both Mercedes and Red Bull.
So you think he'll operate that and go to Red Bull?
Yeah. In my view, he goes to Red Bull. And look, I think Williams' long-term future is there. It's bright.
It's on the right trajectory, yeah.
Yeah, but the short term is still, I mean, it's going to take some time before they find their feet. And if the 2025 is, I don't expect it to be that great for Williams. We can't really, I mean, let's be very pragmatic about it. It's not going to be the case. I just think that as soon as the option opens up with Red Bull, I mean, it's a no-brainer. From Williams to Red Bull, it's a no-brainer. I think as soon as Horner or Marco come calling, he's going to make the move.
Yeah.
I think one driver is going to be Alex Albon. I think Alex Albon is probably a Williams lifer. And I mean, it seems to be the case. I think his teammate is going to be Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh, okay, I think interesting. Up. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So it becomes another Red Bull rejects lineup.
I mean, half the grid is actually Red Bull rejects.
Is Red Bull rejects, yeah.
Basically. One of them has come back to RB. So I think Yuki comes back. Yuki joins Williams because it sucks, but I don't think he goes to Aston Martin with Honda. It seems like that's not on the cards. And if that's not happening, RB is not happening, then I think this seems to be the more I think it's a viable option for both parties.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
That's what I think happens.
Right? I think if I had to plan this out, I probably would have put someone else at RB and moved Yuki myself. But anyway, I didn't plan it out because I never plan podcasts out ever. But yeah, what's the next team?
The next one is Aston Martin.
Oh, this is my fun one. Do you want to go first or will I?
You should.
No, you should because mine's crazy. Go first. Who do you think?
Okay, so I think one of them is going to be Fernando Alonso. The second is going to be George Russell.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember I said he leaves Mercedes, and I think this is what's going to happen is Lawrence Stroll is going to open the bank for Max Verstappen. What ultimately happens is there comes an impasse where Max says no. And then Lawrence is in a position where I hope so. He finally realizes that Lance is probably the biggest bottleneck in the entire Aston Martin growth story. Yep. Lance is sent to WEC, which is apparently in the works right now.
It's actually starting in 25. So they're getting,
So the whole thing is already in motion. Once
we've
that
had the
happens,
exact same idea but two different drivers. This is hilarious.
Yeah. I think you went with Max, I know that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry for the anticlimax. But yeah, I think at that stage, George is probably the one driver who, again, Newey, Cardile, and Dan Fallows, and a ton of money, and Alonso already in the team. It's probably perfect for someone like George to actually move. Plus, there's this also another thing of what's his name? Mike Elliott? Not Mike Elliott. I'm forgetting the name. The former Mercedes guy that is actually going to lead Aston Martin.
Oh, it starts with an A. I can't remember. It's
not Aldo Costa, right?
No. His first name's not an A. It's not Loic Serra, is it? No.
Like Serra is going to be the technical director at Ferrari.
Who am I thinking?
Forgetting the name.
I know who you're talking about. I just cannot remember for the life of me. He moved earlier this year, basically.
The man who headed the Mercedes HPP.
Yeah.
How can I forget the name?
If you want, yeah. We'll look at it. I'm sure we can.
Anyways, so since that guy actually knows George, and when you have the entire thing in place, plus George not being appreciated or loved to an extent at Mercedes, once you have all of that, I think it's going to be a case where George says, fuck it, enough with the Mercedes, enough with being the second driver. I'm moving to Aston Martin, proving myself. And maybe a gamble, a project, but once you have a 50-year-old Alonso and myself, ultimately the team is going to bank on me. So that's where I think he ends up.
Yeah, I was trying to look up who that is, but I cannot find it. But it doesn't matter anyway, I suppose. You can look it up. Well, so mine is Max and Alonso. I think Alonso would kill someone before leaving in 2026 because even though Alonso's not having, Andy. Oh, sorry, you were talking about Andy Kell. There's someone else who's gone as well, but I can't remember what the other guy's name was. There was some high up in Mercedes.
It's him.
So you've got Andy Kell. You've got Andy Kell, you've got Newey, you've got Cardile, you've got Dan Fallows, who I think stays. You've got all this money. The facilities are amazing. The wind tunnel's coming online, and most importantly for Max, I think, is obviously Newey, but also Honda. So I think Max is pretty confident that you're going to have two engines that you could safely say will be the best in 2026, and I think that's going to be Honda and Mercedes, with Ferrari close third. I think that's how it's going to map out. And I think the difference between the Honda and Mercedes will be negligible, personally, because again, this will not be 2014 all over again. It's very different.
I think there's one thing everyone needs to understand. The power unit differential in terms of, you can say, performance, it's not going to be massive because most of it is similar. There's just an increase in the, you can say, the electric energy weightage. It used to be 20%, it's now 50%. So,
and they've been far more prescriptive in these engine regs than they were in 2014. So you're unlikely to see something like a split turbo and a very different MGUK and stuff like. No, that's my point. So you're unlikely to see some sort of crazy, thing that gives them a huge lead. And if you do, then Honda is just as likely to find it now as Mercedes is. Especially because a lot of staff left HPP as well. That's the other thing. I'm going to say Max goes there. I think Max basically starts to get fed up with Red Bull in 2025. And I think he looks at his options, right? One is Mercedes, which could be the safe bet. But then the other is a shit ton of money from Lawrence Stroll to go and join a team that has got Andy Kell, Adrian Newey, Dan Fallows, Enrico Cardile, Alonso in the other seat, and basically sounds like you're joining what essentially is the Ferrari build up to the year 2000. It might not work, but it could be, because they're building like a super team where it's just a blank check to go, here's everything we need. And their facilities and wind tunnel are, bar none, the best on the grid. The best on the grid. And on top of that, not only are they the best, they were also built and designed for a cost cap era, which means that every single penny from those facilities will be saved to go into the car. And I think the only thing that anyone could say badly about Aston at the minute is, sure, their performance on track isn't great now, but remember, those facilities aren't finished. The wind tunnel's not finished. They haven't got all these new staff in, and Stroll is a fucking waste of space. So I think what's going to happen is, I think that basically Lawrence Stroll is going to have the possibility to have Verstappen and Alonso, in the team for 2026. And I think that Alonso will have a maybe difficult season this season, but I think Alonso next year will kind of be old Alonso for a while. And essentially he'll make the decision to say, look, go and do WEC for a year, win the championship in WEC. We'll pump every penny into it and let us kind of win this. And then once we win in 2026, Alonso will retire and you can come back. I think that's what he'll say to his son. It's like, you go, let us do the work, come back when we're ready. I think it's going to be Max and Alonso, and I think it's going to be, if it's Max and Alonso, it will be epic. It'll be epic.
It will be. Actually, I wrote an article on this as well, why I thought the Max thing is not going to happen. And one of the biggest reasons is, if you've seen Max's interviews, what's one thing he hates when it comes to selecting F1 teams? It's basically the fact that he does not want to be a part of a project. He wants to go to something that is a sure shot win. And I think we both are in agreement of the fact that we don't expect Aston Martin to be a race winner next season. It's going to be a major surprise if that happens, but I don't think we expect that.
In these regulations, anything could happen. I mean, they could,
but still, it could, but that would be a bigger surprise, and it would be a bigger turnaround than what Mercedes has.
Let's be honest, though. Right? If Newey comes in, he's going to be focused on the 26 regulations, because he's going to come in May. He's going to come in May of 2025. So him and Cardile and Dan Fallows at that point are going to be fully focused on 2026 anyway. Yeah. So if the 2025 car isn't amazing out of the gate, and this goes for most teams, to be honest, if the 2025 car is not brilliant straight away, it's very unlikely they're going to upgrade throughout the season, because they're going to spend all of 2025 on 2026. So
we're basically going to have I think it would be something similar to what we had in 2021, where the cars that were good, we knew where they were going to be. It's not going to be much of a change.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, when you add all those things, the biggest problem is if Aston Martin does not have on-track performance to show to Max, they will be selling him a dream. And I don't think Max is the kind of driver who is first desperate enough to be sold on a dream, because he's not in a situation where he's in a worse car or something like that. He's not. He's not Lewis Hamilton, McLaren 2012. He's not in that position.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That makes a difference.
I would agree with that, except for the fact that if they do sign Newey, right? This is a big if. So if they don't sign Newey, this argument kind of goes out the window. But if they do sign, well, maybe Fallows as well. But
let's assume that he's signed.
If they sign Newey, right? The only thing I would say is, if you've got Newey and Honda both telling you we are 100% sure that we will have, this car level performance and this car level performance next year.
Yeah.
I think that those are the only two people on the grid that could convince Max to say, look, I know we're not performing right now, but this is what we have in store. And I think that's less of a dream, because if Newey's telling you we're going to have the best car, and if Honda's saying we're going to have the best engine, then you've kind of got two, if any other team, even if Red Bull says to him, we've got this for next year, are you going to believe Red Bull and some guys who are putting a Ford badge on an engine, or are you going to believe Newey and Honda?
I think it depends on Max knowing who built the Red Bulls of the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something that, I mean, again, fans don't know who built the Red Bull cars. Max knows. And Max has been quite vocal and open about the fact that
Vache
since 2015, it's been Pierre Vache. It's not been Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey has given his inputs, but he's not the primary.
Well, it was very much Dan. It was Dan Fallows up until 21, though. Has been the lead.
It was Pierre Vache. It was Pierre Vache.
Dan Fallows was the technical director.
He was, but the thing is, he worked under Newey. Right now, the two most wanted engineers on Formula 1 grid are Balbao, as well as Pierre Vache. The reason behind it is everyone knows the kind of impact those two have had. Now, again, we're basically spitballing, but the point is, my only worry is Max has been very clear cut on the fact that he does not want to be a part of a project. And once he says something like that, it makes me take a step back into thinking that if he does not want to be a part of a project, he always wants to be in the fastest car. Aston Martin is not a team he's going to go.
If that is his outlook, then yes, the only option for Max is just to stay with Red Bull until the end of 2026.
Yeah.
And then see who's winning, and then basically go to them and go, hey, I'll come drive for you. Because Max, realistically, at that point as well, there is the other side. And I've said that the other option is Max just leaves for a year. Because I think Max could be the type of driver that becomes kind of Senna. And before anyone gets annoyed in the comment, I'm not saying I'm not even talking in terms of performance. I just mean Senna in terms of, I could see Max being the type of guy that doesn't really care about the money as much as winning. So it just kind of goes up. If Aston are by the end of 2026 absolutely destroying it, walks up to that team and says, look, I'll drive for free. I just want the fastest car. Give me a year contract. Like Senna was literally to Frank Williams, I'll drive for free and you can give me a 1-year contract. I just want the fastest car. And I could see Max being that kind of guy as well. I don't think he'll ever be in that position because drivers like them tend to get big money now anyway. But I could see him very much being like, right, fuck it, just give me the fastest car. I don't care what the contract is, you know?
And I think that's what I think is going to happen with him, because I just don't see him going anywhere else, honestly. I mean, for me, what happened was, I just don't see Max to Mercedes being an organic fit. I've always had a few reservations. I don't know why. I just don't think it's going to work. Especially with Kimi Antonelli almost confirmed. It makes me take a step back as well, because now Toto Wolff has his own project in place. He has his prodigy, and he wants... Look, if at any point in time you ask Toto Wolff, a world championship for Max Verstappen in Mercedes or a world championship for Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, everyone knows what he's going to pick. He's going to go for Kimi Antonelli, because that is his kid. He's brought him up. And I think that's always another thing that might make Max think twice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think honestly, if you just jot down all the points, Enrico Cardile, you have Dan Fallows, you have stunning facilities, and I think I talked about it earlier in a few podcasts ago, where Aston Martin's infrastructure and facilities are next to none. Maybe a few years ahead of almost every team.
If Aston hadn't have gone on like Cardile and Andy Cowell and now potentially Newey, I don't think I'd be this excited, because the facilities for me are a big thing because we're in the cost cap era, and it's really important to have the right facilities.
It shows
but
intent
I also,
as well, right?
It does, but I would also have been a little bit concerned at the minute that it was going to be another Toyota or Honda, because in the past we've had teams just pump money in and go nowhere. But I think the difference with Aston is the personnel. Like, they're getting people that are just the best of the best in the sport in. And I think that's where, like, if they can hold on, like Dan Fallows hasn't really delivered what I expected. But I also think that they should probably try their best to keep him, because he obviously offers something. Like, he was seen as a big reason as to why Red Bull had a big, like a proper advantage in 2021. We know he's a good guy. Like, he's very good at this. So if they can keep Fallows and Cardile and have Andy Cowell and have Newey, all of a sudden you've just got just this epic pool of, just incredible engineers who then have a blank check essentially to bring in other engineers. The only downside to that might be the cost cap, but anyway,
I mean, it's still manageable. There are already ways through which they actually get this.
They can work for Aston Martin. It's the same as Mercedes and Mercedes and Ferrari. People were like, "Oh, Red Bull has two teams, so they can do this," or "Red Bull has its technology, so they're skirting the cost cap." And it's like, do you really think that the guys who? But it's like, if you're thinking Red Bull does that, like Mercedes has an actual sports car division, AMG. McLaren has McLaren. Ferrari has Ferrari. Of course, if Red Bull's doing it, then obviously the other guys are.
Precisely. And they're not foolish. I mean,
no.
Anyways, so again, I hope it happens. Look, any which way, I think every time we sit down and discuss about Aston Martin, it does make you
excited,
almost worried. There are actually, instincts of what happened with Mercedes in 2014. It's a super team that is being created, and at some point,
I would say for me, Aston is getting me excited. Like, I haven't been a fanboy, as I've said, of a driver since Vettel left, but I have been a fanboy of like the Aston project, and I completely understood why Seb went there and why Alonso went there, because there is a feeling around it that it's kind of, what it feels like to me exactly like? It feels like to me the exact same as Red Bull when they joined. Because you've got this billionaire that kind of, a billionaire with Aston Martin as well. So you've got Stroll and Aston, right? So you've got this brand everyone knows with a billionaire who, yes, he's in charge, but his basic instinct is to just go, give me the best people. Yeah, here's some cash. Like, you go run the team. I'm not going to be here day to day. You just tell me who you need and I'll go get them. And that's what Dietrich did. Dietrich was just like, find me the best people to helmet. Like, Horner came in and it was like, okay, find me the best people and I'll just write the check and we'll just build it. Whatever you need, no problem. And it kind of feels like early Red Bull where we, even when Newey joined Red Bull was it 2007 he joined Red 2006, wasn't
2006.
it? 2006. So even then you had a situation where, so like, it feels like that build up to another regulation set, where it's like, this is Red Bull again, but going into 2026.
Imagine whichever driver takes the plunge and joins Aston Martin for 2026, and the car ends up being just similar to what happened with Mercedes in 2014. Just imagine the jackpot that would be. Either
which is why I don't think Alonso leaves, because I think he just decides I'm staying. Like, after all of this, surely he puts up.
That's it.
Yeah, like I just think even if he has a terrible season for the rest of the season, a terrible season in 2025, surely he says, right, I'm a season away from what could be an amazing car. So worst case, it doesn't work out and I just leave at the end of 2026 without a title. But best case, I could end up in a fucking title fight in 2026. Like, I don't think
and
he
he
leaves.
craves for it. He is not
Yeah.
leaving. I mean,
No.
again, I think he needed the summer break because
Mm-hmm.
he was starting to get a bit pissed off, rattled, whatever you want to call it. And I think the summer break has been the time where he's sat back. He's realized that what his options are and what might be there at the end of the entire struggle of the next 18 or so months. And
Yeah.
again, it's very interesting.
I'm sure that's why he had the option to go to Mercedes, and I'm sure that's
didn't.
why he turned it down. I think because he probably looked at the 2026 option and said, right, well, who is most likely to kill it in 2026? And I think everything points to
Yeah.
Aston. And if they sign Newey in September, which is what it sounds like at the minute, like
Yeah.
surely he just says, right, screw it. Well, I have to wait and see what Newey does then. You know,
Yeah.
like I can't. Yeah.
And
So,
it's a dream come true for him because he's basically lost to new cars a lot in his life,
Yeah.
and he'd be more than happy to actually get a chance to drive with one of his.
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, yeah, again.
So who have we got left now? Is it just
One team left. Your favorite team is from
Jesus
France.
Christ. Yeah. Well, I already know
First
what
of
the
all-
lineup's going to be, so it's fine.
Yeah, first of all, I don't even know if it will be called Alpine because that's also a big
High
I mean,
tech.
yeah, it might be. It might be called high tech. Whichever it is, what do you think the 2026 lineup is going to be?
I hate this.
And the answer cannot be I do not care.
No. I absolutely hate this. But I can tell you who it's going to be in 2026, and I hate it, and no one's going to like it. It's going to be Gasly and Mazepin. Basically,
I'm not
from
entirely sure Mazepin is allowed to compete. Apparently, his
yeah,
father
he is now.
He is now.
Yep,
Are you
in May
sure?
of
Because his
yes,
father is one of the
doesn't matter. In
oligarchs,
May
right?
of or in March or May of this year in 2024, the EU regulators, which would regulate over FIA basically as well, they removed Nikita Mazepin specifically from the sanctions list because they said he couldn't be sanctioned just because of who his father was. That's unfair. So it's been ruled essentially that he can come back in. His father probably can't touch F1, but essentially he can drive. Now, the sanctions are slowly being lifted, not on most things, but in terms of sports people and stuff like that, they're not being as strict. And I think by 2026 they won't be anyway. But even if they are, he would have a case to run under
nationality.
Just a blank flag, basically. They can do that, so he just wouldn't be able to run with a Russian flag.
I think the shittiest thing happened to Robert Schwartzman, who is basically Ferrari Junior. So he's a Russian, and first he was running the Russian flag. Then whatever happened, then because of the sanctions, he moved, and I think his mother is from Israel, so he ran with an Israeli flag.
Poor guy, yeah. That's got to be tough, right? But yeah, I think everything I'm hearing and everything I'm seeing tells me that Mazepin and High-Tech and Vladimir Kim, I think his name is, he's a Kazakhstani businessman. They are kind of going all in. It won't be Uralkali because he's no longer the CEO of Uralkali and he only owns 48% of it. He's been kind of divested of that. But what it sounds like to me is he's kind of moved a lot of his money. I think maybe I'm crazy on this, and I'm sure someone in the comments will let me know. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Vladimir Kim, who's like the richest man in Kazakhstan, and Mazepin have had some business dealings before. I believe so. So it would not surprise me if basically there's a shell game around just Kim becomes like the main backer, but it's it's kind of both of them together. Stranger things have happened in Formula One, but so and then you're going to have Flavio as the CEO. You have Oliver Oakes running it. I think Flavio will help with the sale and then kind of be kept on as kind of the guy running the top game of the show. Because if you want someone to help you get dodgy Russians into Formula One, Flavio's your man. You know, he's gonna get everything sorted. But I think as much as I hate the idea of Nikita Mazepin being back because it's a pay driver who's worse than shit, it does also mean that the Bernie Ecclestone era is back. Because we've got corruption, we've got Russians, we've got Flavio.
We didn't have that many Russians during the Bernie era, right?
No, but I just mean we've got, corruption basically, which is what
show.
Bernie
Basically,
stood for.
It's back to being a shit show.
Do you not miss it?
I mean, the orgies are gone, so
yeah. But they weren't, and they were never Nazi themed.
They were Nazi. Yeah, that's the most important bit.
There was an orgy, but it was only allegedly Nazi themed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, no, he termed it a social event, right? Max Mosley. I was actually going through the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh god. So who are you putting at Alpine?
Yeah, I don't. I think Gasly stays because he has no other place to go. I think Jack Doohan will stay. I don't think the Mazepin thing is going to happen because look, High-Tech has been known to look. It's a brand that has actually grown in F3 and F2, decent enough. I'm still not convinced that the whole Mazepin thing actually happens. It's just
well, we do know they were. You know that Mazepin was deeply involved in their F1 entry attempt, right? Like he was funding a lot of that.
That's there.
Yeah.
I just look because for 2024, which one is it? 2025. Doohan is almost done. He'll be announced in September apparently.
Yeah.
If that is happening, then I don't see 2026 being something, unless and until with the Flavio thing. I think Flavio has actually been brought in to just shoot up the
sell
price
the team
and sell.
or
That's the whole point. I don't think he sticks around for longer.
Maybe not. I just want him to because I'm a huge fan of Flavio.
But he's a spent force. Honestly, he's put 74, 75.
He's
How
amazing.
old is he?
Yeah. He's just one of the best people in F1 by far.
Sure. I just don't think it will happen. Plus, because what I also think is Gasly and Doohan, it's not going to be big difference in terms of performance. Doohan is good, so maybe we don't see a scenario where Mazepin comes in. I really hope so. Because look, 2026 new era. I don't want it to start with that piece of shit coming back, anyways. So I'm just being hopeful. I don't want it to be ruined with that guy coming in, because look, there have been assholes in Formula 1, but I don't think there has been anyone as big an asshole as Mazepin was. Even his you remember what happened with him and Yuki Tsunoda in Formula 2? Apparently he lost the lead and he just almost ran over a particular cone or something after the race, and he's a nutcase. A spoiled Russian brat. So I really hope it doesn't happen.
I mean, we never see useless drivers getting seats in a team because their father owns part of it, do we?
Strolovic. Mr. Strolovic is back. Yeah. That piece of shit. And
I think so. That's every team, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Can we just do one last thing for fun?
Yeah.
In terms of constructors, not drivers, but in terms of constructors, who will be the top 3 teams in 2026? Just what would your prediction be?
I think McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull.
In that order, so McLaren first, Ferrari.
No, not in the order, but okay. If you want to go by the order, I think. Wow, that. Oh,
it's really hard to predict, isn't it?
I completely discounted Aston Martin.
Yeah, I love how you just went on a big rant about Aston and then you were like, yeah, forget about them.
Yeah. Aston. Okay, I'm going with Aston, Red Bull. Oh, Ferrari. That's my top 3.
I'm going to say Aston, McLaren, Mercedes.
I'm just worried about the driver lineup at Mercedes. That's why I'm not picking them in that.
I'm just worried about Ferrari in general. So, in fairness, Ferrari right now have really good drivers. Ferrari in 25 and 26 will arguably have brilliant drivers because as much as I slander Hamilton on Twitter, I have a lot of respect for him and he is a fantastic driver. So I think him and Leclerc is, a great lineup.
The best lineup.
But the problem with Ferrari, and I don't know how to word this, they are Ferrari. I think that's the problem, isn't it?
The problem with Ferrari
Enzo Ferrari must be rolling in his grave because Ferrari right now is making better road cars than they are an F1 team. And that
And it was supposed to be the opposite.
Like, the road cars were only ever built to pay for his racing teams.
Yeah. Who would have thought? I mean, the thing is, and
although they did win WEC,
you can
right?
say,
so
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so
Ferrari winning WEC is a big thing, because in the 70s, that was what defined Ferrari.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if in 2026, right, Max Verstappen and Alonso are fighting for the F1 title with an Aston, while simultaneously Lance Stroll is winning WEC in an Aston? I think that will not do anything good for the reputation of WEC, because you know the way, like, it's like F1 is like the pinnacle of motorsport, and people are like, no, WEC is amazing. Like, what are you talking about? WEC is, and it's like, yeah, look, you've got Lance Stroll winning. You can't talk. Like,
I mean, yeah. Okay, endurance racing, good, great. People love it. I don't. I just don't. Because the car makes a much bigger difference. I don't think they're the best drivers in the world that are actually driving in.
It's more about it's even more about the car than F1 is. Yeah.
And again, I mean, there have been drivers that have actually, and you can just instantly see the difference in class. Alonso stepped in, and you can see the difference. Weber did that. Hülkenberg did it, and to an extent, you can see the similar thing happening with Robert Schwartzman this season. He's a very talented driver who never got a chance. But as soon as he stepped into the Ferrari, he was brilliant. And these are, and you can see, and other drivers that are actually basically rejects when it comes to Formula 1. They go there, they perform, but it's more of the car in the end.
Yeah.
And some people find it hard to accept. I mean, there are apparently rumors of Alex Palou, the IndyCar champion, of him stepping into Formula 1 with Audi. There have been conversations. And apparently a lot of people are saying that he will dominate Hulk. I have my reservations.
Hulk is far too underestimated. It's ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
Oh, he's never had a podium. Yeah, let's look at the cars he drove, though. Like, shut
precisely.
up. You know?
But yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
I think just to cap it off, I think one thing we didn't really touch on, even in the last time, Adrian Newey's, I mean, we talked about it a bit before we recorded the pod. Adrian Newey being rejected by Ferrari, or the talks falling completely breaking off. Do you think, what's your take on the whole thing? I'll give mine later.
Again, if it's true, because there's been widely varying reports.
Assume that it's true. Yeah.
Me and you are both pretty sure it's true, right? Yeah. But to be fair, I think me and you also gave up on the idea of him going to Ferrari pretty quickly as well, because it seemed like talks happened and talks fell apart, and it kind of like, it doesn't seem like this is new news. It seems like this is like a few months old now, and finally Ferrari fans are just accepting it. It's like,
and the details are actually coming out. Just to frame it for you.
So
just to frame it for you, the main detail that has actually come out is Newey demanded a lot of power administratively in Ferrari, and that was where Fred Vasseur drew the line that maybe now he's encroaching in my territory.
Yeah.
So first of all, why Newey did that? Secondly, if he did, then did Ferrari do the right thing by not pursuing him?
So that's what I've heard as well, that it's basically Fred declined it. And I think this is another situation where Ferrari have shot themselves in the foot, because I think if this was the end of 2023 and Fred heard that basically Newey's going to come in and essentially run the whole technical side for us, right? He's going to have complete control over that, and I'm going to work on the day-to-day, and he wants some input on drivers or whatever, or he wants, decision-making with drivers with me. I think Fred would have said, yeah, fine. You know what I think has happened? I think that Ferrari went over Fred's head on Lewis Hamilton. They've gone over his head on loads of things over the last while. They've been very kind of picky and choosy of talking about things he's done. And I think Fred basically said, no, I'm not giving away any more control. And if I am, I'm out of here. And Ferrari was then stuck in a position where they didn't 100% have Newey, because realistically he was still shopping around. But they couldn't continue the talks because they could end up with no Fred and no Newey at the same time. So I think they shot themselves in the foot. And the annoying part about the whole thing is it's not even because of Lewis Hamilton signing. Like they could have had it fine if Ferrari just did what every other team did, which is called up Fred and said, Fred, listen, we potentially have a shot at getting Lewis Hamilton in. Are you on board? He says, yeah, sounds good. Bring him into the talks. Let him be part of the decision. And everything would have been fine. But instead, they basically called up and said, Fred, we've signed Lewis Hamilton. And I think that was the first crack in kind of the, you know... And
you can see
as I've said a million times in the podcast, for any crazy Team LH, Cult LH fanboys listening, you won't have been to this point anyway. You would have got pissed off after the first 4 minutes, I'm sure. But it's not to say again that Hamilton isn't a good choice for Ferrari. It's just that you can't make decisions over your team principal's head and then expect your team principal to be happy with that. It's just not done in Formula One. So, it's yeah.
Why do you think Newey put up these extensive demands?
I think that's what Newey wants, because I think Newey just like.
By the way, it seems just to clarify, these demands, they are far more than the kind of power he had at Red Bull as well.
Yeah,
but then because the apparently the last time Newey had these much administrative power was in Williams when Damon Hill was fired by Williams. That was the moment when Newey left, because Newey wanted Hill to stay. So going back to those levels where Newey almost wanted to part ownership with the team.
I think the simple reason is that, right, at Red Bull, he didn't need all of these things because he kind of had free reign at Red Bull anyway. That was always kind of there, and Red Bull was happy to keep it where he could just do what he wanted. So that was fine. I think the problem is if he's going into a new team now, he needs to have that in writing. Like, so there's probably things in there that he was asking for that he could do at Red Bull because he didn't need it in a contract.
Yeah.
Like Horner and Dietrich would just let him do it. Because it's like, yeah, it's Newey. Like, give him the fucking keys to the factory. Like, it's fine. He could do what he wants. Whereas I think if he's going to Ferrari, for example, and actually, especially at Ferrari, because if he's going to Aston or Mercedes, maybe not Mercedes, but if he's going to Aston, he probably knows he can walk in and just do what he wants. Whereas if he's looking at Ferrari, he sees that they famously meddle with everything. So he wants it in writing. Like, he's like, no, I can't have a handshake deal on this.
It's basically a case of Newey not having the confidence in a team that has been maligned in the past by political turmoil. It entirely comes down to that. Newey basically, whatever he demanded was, he was trying to safeguard his own position in the team so that he can actually work freely. And basically that was what he wanted. He said, okay, you want me, this is the money, and these are what I want. These are the conditions that I want. They were fine with the money. They had zero issues. I think it was 100 million over 3 years, which is stunning amount for any engineer.
Any engineer, yeah.
Yeah, it is basically equal to what I think the top drivers get in Formula 1.
Yeah.
Keeping that aside, the problem was the administrative part. Ideally, he would not have asked for something like this at a Red Bull or maybe even at an Aston Martin. But with Ferrari being what Ferrari is and the reputation and everything in the past, that's why he had to do it. And that's why the thing didn't work out.
I think the thing is,
honestly,
even if he asked for those things at Aston or Williams, I think Aston or Williams are in a position where they would have just said, yeah, fine. Like, if that's what you need to
do
work,
anything you want,
fine.
Yeah.
So, whereas Ferrari, obviously under Fred, like I said though, I do think part of it as well is just that Fred probably doesn't want any more control over his team right now.
And I can understand that as well. I mean, if Fred's role changes from being a team principal to someone being a joint team principal, I don't think he wants that, because
I think. Do you think that's maybe one of just? I know this is an off topic, but a similar question.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that is the difference between the key difference between a team like Toyota, who had all the funds, and a team like Aston, which is Aston is operating the way Red Bull did, which is basically, let's just get the best people and let them run free. Like, that's what Ferrari did with John Todd and Rory Byrne and Ross Brawn. They basically, at that time, Ferrari said, here's a load of cash. You guys know what you're doing. They basically let them run themselves, and they were successful. It seems like any time there's like board control in an F1 team, it just doesn't work. And I think
I think the problem. I think there's one major difference between the way Aston is going and the way Red Bull went. Red Bull did not go hell for leather when it comes to getting resources in. They had Newey, they had Horner, and when it came to drivers, they developed in-house. Vettel was the first driver that actually won. He's not what you'd call a superstar when he won the title.
yeah, he was a
Mercedes
young
is
driver,
more similar to Aston Martin on that front, because Mercedes, the first, I mean, I still get astounded when I look at the entire lineup. They had everyone, and that is how they won. And again, it comes down to how Ross Brawn built the team. Mercedes got Ross Brawn in place and gave him 3 to 4 years. Again, Toto Wolff played a role because he helped in increasing the funding, which was a big issue in the earlier years.
Yeah.
But it was entirely Ross Brawn's mastermind that he brought people in place. He brought a star driver. First it was Michael, then it was Lewis. He brought them, and then the entire thing gelled.
Yeah.
Somewhat similar is what Aston has.
I get what you mean. Yeah. I guess there's two sides to it, isn't there? Because there's that side, and then I'm probably thinking more the Stroll Dietrich type, who just kind of, that's the difference for me.
Yeah.
But I see what you mean. Yeah.
And why
it's actually
did not win?
So basically, it's best of both worlds. Aston, that's
like
what
that,
Aston's kind of exciting in that point, where you've got the best of both worlds. If you've got someone bringing all these best people in, but you've also got kind of no real board, because it's more just Stroll saying, yeah, no, fine. So they can make the decisions quickly. We don't need a quarterly board vote. Stroll just calls up and says, yeah, do it. Like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. But I do think that Dietrich Mateschitz, he did not join Formula One for Red Bull to be champions or something. I think that was not the primary
He just
motive.
loved racing.
Yes. Stroll wants to win, which is a major difference. That's why Stroll is more involved compared to how Dietrich was. Dietrich was more in the background, and he let Marco and Horner do the entire thing. I think that's where the whole culture is different.
He basically just wanted to create like the best racing team, but the best didn't even mean like winning. It was just kind of like the coolest racing team, like,
They were. I mean, again, that's how Horner even.
They're far more corporate now than they used to be, though.
That's why the whole thing seems a bit different now, isn't it?
It seems a bit odd, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Horner will lead a consortium to buy the team in 26 or 27. Personally,
ideally,
I think we talked about this.
Yeah.
Before, yeah.
Ideally, Red Bull should let him. It should be something similar to what Toto has with Mercedes. He should be a part owner, and what even McLaren had with Ron. But again, that's a story of different
another conversation.
Anyways, I mean,
cool.
We're done with the entire list of what I think the 10 teams. We predicted the 2026 driver lineup, and we've talked a bit about how Ferrari again fucked the whole thing. I don't think I'd say that Ferrari fucked it up, because the position that Fred was in, I don't think if there was any other team principal, he would have said yes. But again, it's the Ferraris, you can say, reputation that hurts them. That's what happened this time around, and that was again, whether it works or not, who the hell knows. Maybe Adrian fails. Adrian has also failed a few years, right?
It's not an overnight. Yeah, it's not an overnight. Yeah. On that bombshell, it's time to end.
That bombshell.
Thanks everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that shite.
Yeah. And by the way, apologies, we didn't have a podcast last time around. Technical issues. Riverside.
Unfortunately, we did actually record a 2.5 hour podcast. It just didn't upload. Unfortunately,
a lot of things. Yeah. Something happened. But yes, we're back.
If we can recover it at some point, we'll get it out. But I think it's unrecoverable. Unfortunately,
it's gone. Yeah. It's gone in the ether.
Cool. All right. Thanks everybody.
Bye. Take care.